This question would go to Elizabeth. How do those different ways compare to traditional models of accessing financing?
Interesting question. And Emily, the truth is there's so much out there today. There's so many ways of being able to access financing, the non-traditional way, because the traditional way has been through the banks. That's what we've known in the domain, the environment that we have. But today, through the use of peer-to-peer funding, where people are, investors get individual investors to come and support them, is another way that a lot of investors are going through. There's a crowdfunding that you've mentioned, which is a key, another way of being able to get funding. And I say this all because they're all ways of being able to access financing. There's angel investors, what they call, people who are more patient in terms of being able to provide you with financing. And then, of course, there's still banks that are now open to business in terms of being able to give unsecured financing. A different way of being able to finance SMEs, basically because of, where we find ourselves. But the reason why I say there's so many ways, the important thing for for SMEs and startups is that we need to understand the different ways of being able to fund a business, so that when you finally need it, then you know where to go. Again, a lot of the times, SMEs struggle because you are between a rock and a hard place, and now you have to be able to, access funding from the person who's willing to give it to you at whatever cost. And that, of course, is so difficult for a business because, for instance, and I don't say it badly, because Shylocks do have their places and times and I guess their space in the environment because they are used. That's a fact of the matter. But the truth is, if you are not aware of, the costs of the funding that you're getting, the patience that the funder has, the strength in terms of, the length of time that you're given to repay, the flexibility of being able to reschedule some of those facilities, then the funding in itself may not necessarily be the one that you choose because you're under pressure may not be the right one. So my encouragement to the SMEs and startups is you must be able to, as you're planning your business, know, for instance, go into great detail about the different ways of funding. There probably will be, there are many hundreds of them, but the thing is, pick 5 that you think, I will align with the business based on costs, tenors, flexibility, patience in terms of being able to allow you to operate your business, especially in difficult environments such as this. I say this because today we've gone through very turbulent environment, for instance, where we have, the floods, you have the protests that have affected businesses one way or the other. Of course, we've had COVID and we've had all these disruptions. Now you can imagine if the person who's funding you comes back and says, I don't care, you have to pay me. It doesn't matter what it is, you have to pay me. And those are some of the contractual agreements we go into simply because at the time at which you want the funding, you want it so badly. And therefore you contract on terms that are not necessarily favorable for businesses and especially SMEs. So I would say again, test at least 5 different types of sourcing of funding. I've mentioned some of them. There's a lot of them also that are available. Just even if you Google, I can assure you, Google has a lot of information and a view. But then also engage with the organizations that are willing to give you more in terms of how to use them, what kind of questions to ask them, how do you engage? Because the truth is, if you don't have the information upfront, when you're not under pressure, then you find yourself in a very difficult situation. I say this also because we have the platforms, the different, mobile platforms that give you quick money. But again, at that point, most of them do not ask what's the interest rate and what are the repercussions of a delay. And sometimes those are quite punitive and can actually affect the business. So, Emily, the truth is there are many, but the truth is also there are ways of being able to manage this. One of the things, a key thing that any business must be able to do, startups, SMEs. I know it's difficult for a lot of business who are already running the course of time, but we must engage in getting information so that you can be able to make the decisions that support your business through good times, but also through turbulent times as we see ourselves facing today.